Hi, in this lesson, we'll look at overriding methods. Let's get started. Recall from our previous lessons that classes can form a hierarchy where each of the subclasses have access to all of the public methods of a parent. In this example, any public method that is defined in the person class will be available for a person, student, or high school student object. What do we do if we don't want to inherit a method from the superclass? A great example of this is the toString method. Oftentimes, we may want the superclass to have a toString method, but we want to define a different toString in the subclass. Introducing the idea of a method override. In a method override, a subclass can redefine a method instead of inheriting that method from the superclass. A method override occurs when a public method in a subclass has the same method signature as a public method in the superclass. Remember, the same method signature means that the methods have the same name and input parameters. In this example, both the person class and the student class have a toString method that doesn't take any input parameters. As a result, we can say that the student class toString method overrides the person class toString method. When the method override occurs, the subclass method will be called instead of the superclass method. In this example, any student object will use the student toString instead of a person toString. A person object will continue to use the person toString that exists. Earlier in the year, we looked at the idea of a method overload. Method overrides sound similar, but have a different purpose and a different implementation. To denote an override in Java, the best practice is to use the @override keyword in the line above the method signature. It is important to note that a method overrides a superclass when it has the same method signature, not because it includes the @override keyword. Including @override is not required. However, it is considered best practice for two main reasons. First, using the @override signals to Java that you are trying to override a superclass method. The Java compiler will check to make sure it actually does override a method correctly, and will throw an error if you do not override correctly. Second, it helps to make your code more readable by telling other programmers that a particular method is being used over a similar method in the superclass. When we consider our design for our class hierarchy, methods and variables that will be used by all the classes are generally put in the superclass. We build out the subclasses to add additional methods and instance variables for our more specific classes. As an example, let's consider the person and student classes again. The person superclass will have name and birthday as the instance variables, and may have a toString and age method. The student class would still need the name and birthday, but we will add grade and GPA to our instance variables. These are specific only to a student, so we add them in our subclass, not our superclass. Likewise, we may add a change grade method and modify the toString method with an override. As a reminder, a subclass inherits all public methods from the superclass, and they remain public. This means that a public method in the person class will be public and available for any student object that is created. When calling methods for an object, Java starts by looking in that object class for that method signature. If it finds it there, it will use that particular method. Otherwise, it will go to the superclass and look for the method. This will continue until it reaches the top of the class hierarchy. Any method that is called must be defined someplace in this class hierarchy. Otherwise, Java will throw an error. Let's take a look at a rectangle and square class example. Starting with the rectangle class, we see two instance variables and two methods defined. The square subclass extends the rectangle. While it doesn't add any instance variables, it does add a getSideLength method and overrides the toString method. As our program starts, the first step is to create a square object. We do this by calling the subclass constructor and passing it a side length of 5. When the square object is created, it calls the superclass and creates a rectangle object with a width and height of 5. When the object is called, Java looks for a toString method. it first checks in the square subclass. Since it finds the method there, it uses that method and returns the toString to be printed in output. When the area method is called, Java again looks to the square subclass first. When it does not find the method in that class, it then looks to the rectangle class, where it does find the method and it prints it out. For an object to use a method, it needs to be defined someplace in the class hierarchy. All superclass methods are inherited by the subclass, but additional methods and variables may be defined in the subclass. If a subclass wants to modify a superclass method, it does so by overriding the superclass method. An override occurs when a subclass defines a method with the same method signature as a superclass. Now that you've learned about overriding methods, let's get some practice using them in the CodeHS editor.